You know what's crazy? Sometimes the person you trust most in the world is the one plotting to destroy everything you've built. I'm Leah. I'm 29, and I learned that lesson the hard way when my so-called best friend decided my marriage needed to end. But honestly, maybe if I tell you the whole story, you'll understand why I'm not exactly crying myself to sleep over it anymore. Miles and I had been married for 7 years. He worked in freight coordination, while I handled administrative stuff for a health clinic. We weren't living large, but we had our little house, shared a car like most couples starting out, and I thought we were solid. Sure, we had our issues. What couple doesn't? Miles could be distant sometimes, always focused on work or whatever project he was obsessing over that week. And yeah, maybe I complained about him more than I should have to my best friend Brooke. Brooke had been in my life since college. The kind of friend who knew every detail about my relationship, every fight, every time Miles annoyed me by leaving his dishes in the sink or forgetting to pick up groceries. She was always there with a bottle of wine and a shoulder to cry on when I needed to vent. Looking back now, maybe I shared too much. But Brooke was perpetually single, had been for years, and I genuinely felt sorry for her sometimes. She'd make these comments about how lucky I was to have Miles, how he was such a good guy, how she'd never find anyone who treated her the way he treated me. I thought she was just being supportive, like a good friend should be. She'd even joke sometimes about how if she ever found a guy like Miles, she'd never let him go. I thought it was harmless girl talk. The week before everything went to hell, I was planning a girls' trip with my sisters and mom. 4 days away from the house, away from the routine, away from Miles's constant work stress. Brooke was so excited for me, kept texting about how I deserved a break from playing house and dealing with a husband who didn't appreciate me enough. She even offered to check on Miles while I was gone, make sure he was eating actual food instead of just cereal and takeout. I remember feeling frustrated with Miles the night before I left. He was on his laptop, barely acknowledging that I was leaving for 4 days. Part of me wanted him to be more upset about it, to act like he'd miss me or something. Instead, he just mumbled something about having a good time and went back to his screen. So when Brooke texted offering to look after him, I said sure. I thought it was sweet that she cared. The trip was exactly what I needed. My mom and sisters were great company. We did some shopping, had nice dinners, actually relaxed for once. I barely thought about Miles except to send him a few texts asking how work was going. He responded with his usual one-word answers, so I figured everything was normal back home. Then came the last night of the trip. I was getting ready for bed when my phone buzzed with a text from Miles. "I know what you did. I want you gone when I get home." I stared at the message like it was written in a foreign language. What the hell was he talking about? I immediately called him, straight to voicemail. Called again, same thing. I started texting back frantically, asking what he meant, what I'd supposedly done, but he left me on read every time. My mom and sisters could see I was freaking out, but I couldn't even explain what was happening because I genuinely had no clue. I spent the entire night lying awake, running through every possible scenario. Had I forgotten to pay a bill? Did he find some old text from an ex? The more I thought about it, the more panicked I became. The drive home was torture. Every mile closer to the house, my stomach twisted tighter. When I finally walked through the front door, Miles was waiting for me in the living room, and I'd never seen him look at me with such pure disgust. He didn't even let me put my bag down before he started yelling, asking me how I could do this to our family, how I could betray him like this, how long I'd been lying to his face. I kept asking what he was talking about, but he wasn't listening to anything I said. Then he dropped the bomb. "Brooke told me everything, about you and her, about all the other women you've been with behind my back." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so completely absurd. Me? With Brooke? With other women? I'm not remotely attracted to women, and Miles knew that. We'd talked about sexuality before, especially when some of my college friends came out. I'd always been completely clear about being straight. But Miles wasn't laughing. He was dead serious, his hands shaking as he told me that Brooke had called him crying the day before. confessing about our supposed affair. According to her story, I'd been seducing her for months, telling her I was questioning my sexuality and wanted to experiment. She'd apparently also told him I'd been hooking up with random women from dating apps, that I'd been planning to leave him anyway. The whole thing was so ridiculous, I couldn't even process it properly. I kept trying to explain that none of it was true, that Brooke was obviously lying for some reason, but Miles just kept saying, why would she lie about something like that? She was crying, Leah. She felt terrible about it. That's when it hit me that he actually believed this crap. My husband of 7 years genuinely thought I was capable of cheating on him with my best friend and random strangers. The man who'd seen me cry during romantic movies, who knew I'd only been with 2 guys before him, who'd watched me struggle with basic social interactions, he thought I was out there, living some secret double life as a serial cheater. I tried everything. I showed him my phone, my social media, offered to call Brooke right then and there to straighten this out. But he said Brooke wasn't answering her phone anymore, that she was too traumatized to talk about it. Convenient, right? The fighting went on for 3 straight days. Miles wouldn't listen to reason, wouldn't even look at me properly when I tried to talk to him. He kept saying that if I could lie about something this big, what else had I been lying about? He started questioning everything. Every time I'd been late coming home from work, every girl's night out, every friendship I had. I tried calling Brooke myself, obviously, but she wasn't picking up. Her voicemail was full. It was like she'd just vanished after dropping this nuclear bomb on my marriage. By the 3rd day, I was exhausted and frustrated and honestly, a little pissed off. If Miles really believed I was capable of cheating on him with my best friend and random women from the internet, then maybe we didn't know each other as well as I thought. So when he said maybe we needed some space to figure things out, I told him fine. If he wanted space, he could have all the space he needed. I expected him to back down, to realize how crazy he was being. Instead, he said if I wanted him gone so badly, maybe I should be the one to leave, since I was obviously the one with secrets to hide. So I did. I packed a bag and went to my sister's place, fully expecting Miles to call within 24 hours, apologizing for being such a paranoid idiot. Instead, 2 days later, a process server showed up at my sister's door with divorce papers. Divorce papers. After 7 years of marriage, he was actually ending things over Brooke's obvious lies. But it got worse. He'd also gotten some kind of emergency order that prevented me from going back to the house or seeing our kids, Emma and Liam. The papers cited concerns about the children's safety and well-being, based on my erratic behavior and lifestyle choices. I couldn't believe what I was reading. How had this spiraled so completely out of control? 3 days ago, I was on vacation with my family, and now I was apparently such a dangerous person that I couldn't see my own children? When I tried to call Miles to talk sense into him, his father Richard answered instead. He told me Miles was staying with them and didn't want to speak to me. Richard had always been kind to me, treated me like a daughter, but even he sounded cold and disappointed over the phone. He said Miles had told them everything and that they supported his decision to protect the children from this situation. Protect them from what? From their own mother? I felt like I was living in some alternate reality where everyone had lost their minds. The next 5 months were the worst of my life. Miles's lawyer painted me as this unstable, promiscuous woman who posed a danger to her own children. They used everything against me. Every time I'd vented to Brooke about feeling overwhelmed with the kids, every time I'd complained about Miles not helping enough around the house, every normal marital frustration I'd ever expressed. Somehow, they'd twisted all of that into evidence that I was an unfit mother. My lawyer said the case was challenging because Miles genuinely seemed to believe what he was saying, and Brooke was willing to testify under oath to support his version of events. That was the part that really got to me. Brooke actually showed up to court and swore that we'd had an affair. She sat there in some conservative outfit I'd never seen her wear, looking all innocent and hurt, talking about how I'd manipulated her emotionally and threatened to destroy her reputation if she didn't keep our relationship secret. It was like watching a complete stranger wear my best friend's face. She had details, too, things only someone who knew me well could know. She talked about supposedly intimate conversations we'd had, twisted innocent moments into something sexual, made everything sound believable enough that even I started wondering if I was going crazy. The worst part was only getting supervised visits with Emma and Liam. Twice a week, for 2 hours each time, with some social worker watching my every move. Emma was 8 and smart enough to know something was seriously wrong. She kept asking why she couldn't come home with me, why Mommy and Daddy weren't living together anymore. Liam was only 5, and he'd just cling to me during our visits and cry when they had to take him back to Miles. Those kids were being traumatized for no reason except Brooke's sick need to destroy my life. I couldn't understand why she'd done it. We'd been friends for almost a decade. I'd been there for her through bad breakups, job losses, family drama. I'd helped her move apartments 3 times, lent her money when she was between jobs, listened to her complain about her dating life for hours. After months of legal battles and thousands of dollars in lawyer fees that I couldn't afford, I finally managed to get joint custody. 1 week with me, 1 week with Miles. It should have felt like a victory, but by then, everything was different. Miles was still cold and distant whenever we had to interact. The kids were confused and acting out. Emma had started having nightmares, and Liam had become clingy and anxious. Our family was broken, and I still didn't understand why. For about 2 months, I tried to make the best of our new arrangement. The kids seemed to be adjusting to going back and forth between houses. Miles and I kept our conversations brief and focused on logistics. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but maybe we could make co-parenting work even if our marriage was over. Then everything changed again. My sister called me on a Tuesday night, practically screaming into the phone. She'd been at some party where a bunch of our old college friends were hanging out, including Brooke. Apparently, Brooke had gotten completely wasted and started running her mouth about things she should have kept quiet. According to my sister, Brooke had been bragging to people about how easy it was to break up my marriage. She was laughing about it, saying she never thought Miles would actually believe such an obvious lie, but that I was even dumber than she'd expected for not being able to prove my innocence. She'd told a whole group of people that she made everything up because she was tired of listening to me act like I had the perfect life when I had everything she wanted. She said she figured if she couldn't have Miles, at least she could make sure I couldn't have him either. The really sick part? She'd apparently admitted that even after destroying my marriage, she still couldn't get Miles to notice her the way she wanted. She'd tried reaching out to him after I moved out, offering to be there for him during this difficult time, but he'd shut her down completely. Someone at the party had started recording when Brooke went on her drunk confession, and by the next morning, the video was making rounds through our entire social circle. My phone started blowing up with messages from people apologizing, saying they should have known better, asking if there was anything they could do to help. But the person I most needed to hear from stayed silent. Miles finally called me 3 days after the video went viral. I thought he was going to apologize, maybe suggest we try counseling, figure out how to rebuild what Brooke had destroyed. Instead, he sounded tired and hollow when he spoke. He said he was sorry for believing Brooke, sorry for putting the kids through hell, but that he couldn't just pretend the last 8 months hadn't happened. He said that even knowing the truth now, he couldn't stop resenting me for how I'd handled everything. He thought I should have fought harder to prove my innocence instead of just giving up and leaving. He said he kept thinking about how quickly I'd agreed to separation, how I hadn't seemed desperate enough to save our marriage. How was I supposed to fight when no one would listen to me? How was I supposed to prove a negative, that I hadn't done something I'd never done? But Miles had already made up his mind. He said he'd started seeing someone new, a woman he'd met through work, who didn't come with years of baggage and betrayal. He wanted to keep our custody arrangement exactly as it was, because he thought we worked better as co-parents than we'd ever worked as spouses. His mother, Linda, had been calling him constantly after the video came out, suddenly very interested in us getting back together for the children's sake. She kept showing up at his place with apologies and casseroles, talking about how we needed to rebuild our family. But Miles wasn't having any of it. The final slap in the face came when Emma mentioned during one of our weeks together that Daddy's friend Catherine had been staying over a lot and made really good pancakes. Catherine, his new girlfriend, had already moved in with him, was already playing house with my children. Miles had completely moved on while I was still trying to figure out how to rebuild a life that Brooke had destroyed with her lies. And Brooke, after the video ruined her reputation here, she'd apparently moved somewhere out of state, leaving behind the wreckage she'd created. It's been over a year now since everything fell apart. Miles married Catherine last month. Emma told me about it when she got back from their week with him. She seemed happy about it, said Catherine was really nice and makes Daddy smile a lot. Miles looks content whenever I see him at school events or kid exchanges. He's gotten a better position at work, bought a bigger house, seems to have this whole new life figured out. The kids love Catherine, which should make me happy for them. But honestly, it just reminds me of everything I lost. And me? I'm still in the same apartment I moved into after the divorce, still working the same job, still trying to piece together a social life after losing most of our mutual friends in the split. Some people reached out after the truth came out, but it wasn't the same. The damage was done. I know I'm supposed to take some responsibility for what happened. Maybe I should have fought harder, been more persistent in proving my innocence. Maybe I shouldn't have complained about Miles so much to Brooke. Maybe I should have seen the signs that she was jealous of what I had. But at the end of the day, I didn't destroy my marriage. Brooke did. She's the one who made up lies about me, who looked me in the eye for months while planning to ruin my life, who sat in a courtroom and swore under oath that I'd done things I never did. Miles chose to believe her over me. He chose to end our marriage without giving me a real chance to defend myself. He chose to move on with someone new instead of trying to rebuild what we'd had. I can't make people love me, or trust me, or want to fight for me. All I can do is focus on being the best mother I can be during my weeks with Emma and Liam, and try not to think too much about the life I used to have. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd handled things differently. If I'd refused to leave the house, if I'd hired a private investigator right away, if I'd been more dramatic in my denials. But you can't live in the past forever. Miles got his happy ending with Catherine. The kids have a stable home with them. And me? I'm learning to be okay with the pieces that are left. Brooke took everything from me, but she didn't win in the end either. She's alone somewhere, probably still scheming and manipulating, still jealous of other people's happiness. At least I know who I really am. At least I can sleep at night, knowing I never betrayed the people who trusted me. That has to count for something, right?